Hey guys, tonight we're going way back, farther than Cleopatra, farther than pyramids with their picture-perfect angles. You're not in modern Cairo, dodging scooters and souk sellers. No, you're deep inside a tomb, a place where the air itself smells like old secrets. Something sweet, spicy, a little smoky. You breathe in, and it's as if time folds back on itself, an aroma older than history books, wafting up from a simple little object, a squat, palm-sized clay pot that once held the essence of a god. You're here to follow the story of that pot, a perfume jar, a scent container, a tiny vessel that outlived empires. It will take us across centuries of Egyptian dust, sweat, divine rituals, and the occasional high society meltdown over spoiled oils. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, drop your location and what time it is where you're listening. I love seeing how far these sleepy journeys reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're crouched in the corner of a burial chamber, watching someone unroll linen from a mummified hand. Beside the body, a line of squat ceramic pots, each sealed tight with wax and cloth. The colors are dull beige, mud, a chalky ochre. But if you lean closer, you'll smell traces of cassia bark, bitter myrrh, and crushed blue lotus. Still faint, still alive. You touch the nearest jar. It is rough. Handmade, no stamps, no signature, just honest clay, baked in open fire sometime around 3000 BCE. During Egypt's early dynastic days, when pharaohs were still figuring out how to wear those double crowns without them falling off in public, these earliest perfume pots weren't glamorous. They weren't meant to be. They were utility items, sometimes given as offerings, sometimes buried with the dead, and sometimes placed in shrines next to statues that probably frowned more than they smiled. Historians still argue whether these pots held perfumes in the way we think of them, like Chanel No. 5 for the afterlife, or whether they contained medicinal oils meant for practical use, like calming a god's headache or embalming a particularly stubborn nobleman. It's hard to say, mostly because no one left behind a perfume recipe card. But there's something tender about how carefully these little pots were arranged, clustered like a family around the body, each with its own role, its own scent, its own version of what memory should smell like. You step out of the tomb now figuratively, gently, because nobody wants a ghostly lawsuit and find yourself under the harsh Egyptian sun. Blinking at a much earlier scene, a woman kneels by a fire pit. She's got one hand inside a clay mound, shaping it slowly. It's not a perfume pot yet. It's a potential. She presses her thumb down into the neck to make a shallow opening. With a worn reed, she carves a quick spiral on one side, just for flair. This is pre-wheel pottery, pre-fancy glazing, pre-Instagram-worthy symmetry. She shapes by memory and by feel. Her kids are yelling about scorpions again, but she tunes them out. The temple nearby wants 5 more oil jars by tomorrow. Someone important is getting buried, or maybe married, or possibly both. You lose track of these rituals sometimes. Later, she'll smoke the jars in an open-air pit, turning some of them dark as bark and leaving others a light sand tone. No consistency, no two alike, but that's the point. Each one will hold something sacred. And the gods, as it turns out, like variety. The scent ingredients are still basic. Juniper berries, congealed frankincense, some rare tree sap collected by someone's cousin down near Nubia. Everything is muddled with fat, maybe goat, maybe crocodile, depending on how lucky you are at the market. That's your perfume base. You stir, you strain, you store, it smells better than it sounds. And no one's bottling these for beauty yet. The idea of perfume as luxury, that's still centuries away. Right now, scent is survival. You mask the rot. You please the gods. You keep flies off bodies and weird spirits out of your linen closet. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some of these early jars may have been reused. One scholar theorized a few. Broken ones had traces of both perfume and beer. So, either someone had very fragrant drinking habits, Or the recycling system in early Memphis was just wildly experimental. You walk through this dusty village, past sun-cracked mud walls and baskets of herbs drying like laundry on rooftops. You catch the smell of tamarisk wood burning, someone singing a lullaby out of tune. In a courtyard, a priestess smears oil onto a baby's forehead while holding a clay jar to the sun as if it were a telescope. Maybe she's blessing it. Maybe she's checking for bugs. Ancient rituals are a little of both. And yet, every one of these pots matters, not just for what they hold, but how they hold it. The clay breathes. It sweats. It leaks if sealed wrong. Potters start figuring this out, one mistake at a time. By 2800 BCE, some jars start appearing with tighter necks, narrower mouths, thicker bases, less leaking, more dignity. Perfume is slowly shifting from crude necessity to something closer to devotion. It's like watching a culture learn how to whisper instead of shout. And as the jars become more refined, so do the scents. People begin playing with combinations: myrrh with cinnamon, lotus with sarsaparilla, spikenard. These oils weren't light spritzes either. They were thick, like syrup. Like you could lather your regrets in them and hope they'd stop smelling like regret. The final scene of tonight's first journey. You're back in the tomb. You watch as the jars are finally sealed and lined up beside the mummy. Each pot a soft promise that memory has a smell. That someday, someone might open one of these, breathe deep, and remember, you just did. The sun is barely up, and already the sand is too hot for comfort. You trudge barefoot, your feet powdered with dust, toward a flickering shape on the horizon. A temple kiln, not a grand monument. No gold, no stone lions, just a low dome of scorched brick, half buried in earth, its chimney puffing a slow thread of black smoke into the morning air. The potter here doesn't look like much of a priest. He's shirtless, sinewy, half covered in clay, and humming something that might be a hymn or might just be a complaint about his back. You watch him work, crouched beside a speeding slab of wood. An early wheel, of sorts, if you're feeling generous. He dips his hands into a bowl of water, then into the gritty, half-wet clay beside him. With steady fingers, he begins to form a vessel, not for food, not for water. This one's destined for perfume specifically. For a temple's sacred oil supply, he pinches the neck narrow, then flares the lip like a blooming flower. The base is squat and balanced. This isn't for pouring, it's for sealing and storing. He adds a little thumb-sized loop near the shoulder, not for decoration, but so someone can tie a reed cord around it and carry it like a charm. You notice the smell now: earthy clay, scorched resin, and under it all, something softer. A breeze carries it from the open kiln, warm frankincense, thick like honey smoke. Somewhere inside that kiln, dozens of little vessels are curing in the heat, hardening, blackening, becoming eternal. Sort of. You shift closer. The air here feels thick, like you're breathing history and ash at the same time. These early kilns weren't precision tools. Temperature control. Forget it. Sometimes the jars exploded. Sometimes they fused together like overeager siblings. Sometimes they came out perfect, smooth, and charcoal-colored, strong enough to last centuries. You have to admire the gamble, especially when the potters couldn't afford to waste ingredients: clay, fuel, even time. Historians still debate whether these temple-fired pots were considered more sacred because of their origin, or just more durable. A few texts hint that some pots were placed near incense fires on purpose to harden their spirit. Or maybe that was just the marketing pitch from temple merchants trying to boost prices during festival season. Ancient branding. Folks, it's older than you think. You follow the potter inside his cramped workshop. It's dim, stuffy, and smells like sweat, clay, and roasted herbs. Hanging from the ceiling are bundles of dried plant matter: marjoram, coriander, cardamom, juniper cones. On a table, you see bowls of sticky brown goo. Some are unrecognizable, others labeled in a crooked hand with ink that smells vaguely of soot and regret. These are the raw materials of ancient Egyptian perfume. But unlike the glossy bottles of modern perfumery, nothing here sparkles. Everything is gooey, pungent, sticky. You dip your nose near one of the bowls and flinch back. That one's likely made with rancid goose fat, great for preserving scent, awful for dating. The potter's assistant enters young, silent, wide-eyed, and begins pouring oils into one of the finished jars. He moves slowly, with almost religious focus. Every drop is precious. It's spikenard mixed with cypress oil, maybe meant for healing wounds, calming fevers, or maybe even repelling evil spirits, depending on who you ask. A quirky tidbit: some potters left thumbprints inside the vessels before sealing them. Not intentional, just human. But now, thousands of years later, archaeologists find them tiny swirls of identity baked into clay. Proof that someone was here. Someone made this. Someone tried to bottle a scent that could outlast death. The assistant seals the jar with beeswax and linen thread, then paints a symbol on the side. A faded ankh, half rubbed away. Was it a sign of life, a mark of contents, or just the potter's equivalent of a scribbled good luck? Outside, a priest chants from the temple steps. You hear the clang of bronze bowls and the soft slosh of water being poured in ceremonial rhythm. The pot you watched being made is carried up the stone stairs, cradled like a newborn. It'll be placed on an altar, probably in front of a statue of Hathor or Isis. The goddess will inhale the scent as part of a daily ritual. The jar opened, the scent released, the divine appeased. You linger in the shadows, watching the priest unstopper a pot and wave the aroma toward the god's face with a fan of woven reeds. No one thinks this is odd. Of course, gods smell. Of course, they have preferences. Some like sweet myrrh. Others want sharp cinnamon or smoky cedar. Historians still puzzle over the exact rituals, whether the gods were believed to literally inhale the aromas, or if the act was metaphorical, symbolic, theatrical, maybe all three. Ancient religion loved multitasking. Your attention drifts as a procession of women passes by. They wear linen dresses stained at the armpits with scented oils, their hair glistening with thick resin paste. Each carries a small ceramic pot, identical in shape but painted differently. Some with lotus flowers, others with leopard spots, and one with what looks suspiciously like a cartoonish falcon wearing eyeliner. These jars aren't going to the gods. They are going into homes, markets, maybe even back alley perfume dealers, because scent is now personal. It's not just divine, it's daily. The potter's work ends up not just in temples, but on vanities, in medicine cabinets, or even hidden under pillows. You trail one of the women into a quiet courtyard. She lifts her jar to her nose and closes her eyes. Her shoulders dry. Maybe it's relief. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's just the only quiet moment she'll get today. This is the real power of these pots. They aren't just clay. They're containers for calm, for memory, for dreams in liquid form. You sit there a while, listening to a dove coo from a roof beam, and watching sunlight creep across the dusty floor. The jar in her hand catches the light for just a moment, and it glows not with magic, not with gold, but with the soft weight of something precious. You're drifting now, carried upriver on a slow, groaning boat stitched together with papyrus ropes. The Nile ripples like silk beneath the hull, warm and green and lazy along the banks. Fishermen call to each other. Hippos blink at the sun. And somewhere up ahead, the scent of wealth floats on the breeze. Frankincense. It doesn't grow in Egypt. Never did. But it becomes a national obsession. The scent of the divine. The smell of ceremony. Power. Healing. And exclusivity. And the moment it arrives from the mysterious land of Punt, part myth, part trade partner, it transforms the humble perfume pot from utilitarian storage into something else entirely. Status. You disembark at a market port. Loud. Busy. The air tastes like dust and date syrup. Carts bump over uneven stone. You follow a man wearing a leopard skin sash as he pushes through the crowd, balancing a tray of tiny alabaster jars. These are not the rough clay pots from earlier. These are soft to the touch, pale as moonlight, with delicate fluting along the sides. Some are shaped like small columns. Others resemble lotus buds. One is carved to look like a crouching baboon, its hollowed belly holding a dollop of perfumed oil. It's adorable, and, according to the seller, very cursed if you touch without paying. Historians still argue whether alabaster jars were used exclusively for perfume or also for ceremonial ointments, sacred balms, or even medicine. But the key shift here is this: it's not just about what goes in the jar, it's about what the jar says about you. Perfume becomes fashion, wealth, the kind of thing you give as a gift to a pharaoh. or hoard in a chest passed down for generations. And suddenly, artisans aren't just potters, they're sculptors, storytellers, prestige makers. You watch a craftsman at work in a side stall. He squats low, holding a lump of alabaster between his knees, slowly carving it with a copper tool worn nearly to a nub. The pot he's making is shaped like a date palm trunk, grooves running vertically down its sides. It'll take him a full day, 2 if he stops to eat. He's surrounded by those raw materials of luxury: blocks of alabaster, crushed malachite for paint, beeswax for seals, and tucked under a linen cloth, a tightly wrapped bundle, a lump of solidified frankincense, amber gold, resinous, smelling of desert rain and royal temples. That lump probably traveled hundreds of miles by foot, boat, and donkey to get here. Through dry salt basins, over mountain passes, across borders that didn't have passport control but definitely had bandits. A fringe theory claims that some of these early perfume jars were deliberately buried under temple foundations' offerings to ensure the gods approve the building's scent, like divine deodorant, or maybe just ancient superstition at its most fragrant. You walk now through the wealthier part of a town. The air is quieter, more calculated. Here, women dab their wrists with oil using carved bone spoons. A servant fans the air so the scent doesn't fade too fast. One woman uses her perfume jar as part of her daily makeup ritual, mixing crushed blue lotus petals into her kohl paste. She's going somewhere important, possibly nowhere. The point is, she smells like she could attend a ceremony at any moment. You're invited, briefly, into a merchant's home. He's proud of his collection, opens a cedar wood box to reveal rows of small pots, each wrapped in cloth. One is made of blue faience, glazed to resemble lapis lazuli. Another is inlaid with tiny shells. He points to a third, shaped like a lion cub, and says it once belonged to a priestess. You're not sure if that's true or just a sales pitch, but you nod, as the scent of something sweet and bitter and smoky rises from within. He offers you a drop of oil from the lion jar. You touch it to your wrist. It's warm, floral, layered. The smell shifts as it dries, first papyrus, then fig sui, then something like cinnamon and river mud. You can't name it. And that's the point. It's a smell that demands silence. By now, perfume jars are appearing on tomb walls and offering lists. Not just things to be buried with, but things to represent your legacy. Your smell is your memory. Even in death, a passing comment you overhear: he who is buried without scent returns as one who stinks. Brutal and probably untrue. But again, branding matters. Back outside, you find a row of market stalls dedicated solely to perfume ingredients. Myrrh chunks glint like candied amber. Ground cinnamon darkens cloth bags. And beside them, shelves lined with tiny, stylized pots, some as small as your thumb, others heavy and round like drinking flasks. One vendor claims his jars are imported from the south, made by desert tribes who use lion milk in their clay mix. You blink, he winks. The jars smell faintly of cardamom. A young boy chases a goat through the street, knocking over a tray of empty pots. The vendor screams something that probably isn't PG-13 in any language, and you help him gather them. As you stack them, you notice tiny etchings on the bases, marks, numbers, maybe even family crests. Another quirky note: scholars recently discovered graffiti on one perfume jar that read something like "smells like victory." No one knows if it was serious or a joke, but the spirit is clear. Perfume isn't just utility anymore, it's identity, it's narrative, it's power. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows between the stalls, you notice people clutching their jars, the way modern travelers clutch phones, holding them carefully, pocketing them quickly, glancing around. These aren't just pots now, they're currency. They're memory containers, their status wrapped in clay and alabaster. And the jars themselves, they're starting to look like treasures. But don't worry, we're not at the royal level just yet. That part comes next. The palace courtyard gleams in the morning sun, and you're standing just outside the royal chambers, pretending not to eavesdrop while very obviously doing just that. Inside, a pharaoh is having his nostrils evaluated. Yes, really. You inch closer to the curtain of hanging reeds that separates you from the inner room. The air inside is thick with layered scents. The sweet burn of honeyed myrrh, the bite of cinnamon bark, something sharp and peppery, maybe crushed acacia seeds, and underneath it all, the damp whisper of alabaster cooling in shadow. You peek through a crack. 3 men in pleated linen robes are lined up beside a low table, each holding a different perfume pot. The pharaoh sits cross-legged, young, bored, and deeply unimpressed. He waves one of the men forward. The pot is unsealed. The priest waves a fan above the jar's mouth, directing the scent toward the king's face like it's incense for the gods, or maybe just high-stakes aromatherapy. The king sniffs, frowns, mutters something. The jar is rejected. Welcome to the world's earliest documented scent panel. Think of it like Project Runway, but with fewer heels and more cassia. Perfume in Egypt, especially in royal circles, isn't just fragrance. It's diplomacy, politics, image. The pharaoh must smell like victory, fertility, and divine wisdom all in a single whiff. The wrong choice. A diplomatic disaster, or at least a really embarrassing festival. Historians still argue whether this daily scent test was ceremonial or just a bizarre personal quirk of a few royal households. There's no rulebook for how often a god king should smell himself, but judging by the stockpile of ornate jars found in royal storerooms, it was often enough to justify its own room. One scholar even speculates that a royal perfumer once lost his job for making the king smell too common. Tough crowd. You wander down the hallway toward the Royal Perfume Archive. The shelves here are stacked with jars of every shape. Slim-necked amphorae, flat-bottomed flasks, tear-shaped glass vessels, and squat alabaster bulbs. Each is labeled not with names like Cedar Nights or Eternal Nile, but with symbols denoting their origin, purpose, or ritual alignment. Some are marked for funerary rites, others for temple blessings. A few are designated private, and you know better than to ask questions about those. One quirky tidbit: certain pharaohs were known to commission personalized signature scents blends no one else was allowed to wear. The recipes were stored like state secrets, passed only to trusted perfumers sworn to silence. Think of it as ancient trademarking or fragrance gatekeeping. You watch one such perfumer at work. He sits cross-legged with a heated stone plate before him, gently warming a thick, reddish oil in a ceramic ladle. He adds crushed petals with tweezers made from bronze slivers, and a few drops of something that smells like sun-baked sand and bitter citrus. You don't know what it is, and you're not supposed to. The pot he pours it into is small, oval, and flawlessly smooth alabaster from a mine so deep, it may as well kiss the underworld. He seals it with a beeswax stopper, then stamps it with a tiny gold scarab. This one, he whispers, will be placed under the king's bed for dreams, or protection, or scent-based nightmares. Depending on how strong the blend is, you pass back through the outer halls and into the palace gardens. Here, perfume is blooming in real time. Sycamore fig trees hang low with ripening fruit. Clusters of blue lotus float lazily on the surface of ornamental pools. Henna, sweet basil, lemongrass, and marjoram spill over stone planters. The royal gardeners are less farmers, more scent sculptors. One woman picks a lotus blossom and crushes it between her palms. She rubs the petals onto the underside of her jaw. Then, using a small ivory scoop, she applies a dab of perfumed oil from a tiny pot hidden in her sash. This moment is casual, intimate, and a little dangerous. Why? Because perfume pots, in royal settings, become tools of flirtation, of control, of quiet rebellion. That pot in her sash might be state-issued or stolen. It might contain a scent meant for the pharaoh, or her own secret recipe. It could say, "I am yours," or "You forgot my birthday last spring, and I haven't forgiven you." Perfume is now personal power. You hear laughter echo down the corridor. Group of royal cousins, probably up to no good, each one jingling with gold. One of them pulls a flask from his belt, shaped like a crocodile and carved from jet black stone. He dabs it on his neck and passes it around. No one dares ask what's inside. Historians speculate that perfume pots like these were passed between lovers, carried into battle, even buried in sand to preserve secret recipes from rival houses. There's one account of a general who was said to wear the same oil blend every campaign, not for luck, for intimidation. Because apparently, "I smell like victory and dead lilies" was a real flex. You walk now into the women's quarters. The air is thicker here, and sweet. Perfume clings to every cushion, every fold of linen, every strand of curled hair. Here, the pots are delicate miniatures no bigger than a thumb joint, many shaped like animals. Cats, ducks, even hedgehogs. You're not sure if those were symbolic or just adorable. But they held the same sacred oil all the same. On a low stool, a young girl practices sealing her own pot. She wraps it with linen and clay, then burns a small incense cone nearby to bless the contents. Her mother nods approval. This will be her gift to the gods at the upcoming moon ceremony. Or perhaps her first offering to a would-be suitor. The last scene you catch before drifting toward the doorway is a priest entering with a large alabaster jar wrapped in embroidered cloths. He bows low and announces the gift for the Great One's nostrils. May they never wrinkle. It's unclear if that's a blessing or a burn. Either way, the perfume inside, absolutely divine. You're somewhere deep in the Valley of the Kings now, under a sky so bright it feels like a spotlight from Ra himself. But down here, beneath the surface, everything is dim, hushed, and sticky with secrets. You descend a narrow tunnel, one torch flickering in your hand, the walls sweating with mineral damp. The floor dips lower, past painted scenes of afterlife feasts, lion-headed gods, and anxious scribes weighing hearts on cosmic scales. Then, there it is, the burial chamber. And oh, someone's already here. But this isn't a priest. This isn't a mourner. This is a thief. You crouch in the shadows, watching him work. He's barefoot, fast, and covered in dust. His fingers move like spiders over the surface of an ornate chest, prying it open with practiced care. Inside, a small alabaster jar, squat and unassuming. But the moment he opens it, the scent hits you like a memory you don't own. It's thick and alive myrrh, honey, pine resin, maybe a whisper of cinnamon. It smells expensive. It smells eternal. And apparently, it smells worth stealing. You watch as the thief tucks the jar into a cloth bundle at his hip and slinks out of the chamber, dodging statues and shadows. One moment he's there, the next gone, left behind. A faint trail of crushed sandalwood and warm panic. This isn't just grave robbing, it's scent piracy. And it was surprisingly common. See, while tombs were filled with golden masks and lapis-studded daggers, some of the most coveted items were perfume pots. Why? Because the oil inside didn't just smell good, it was potent, blessed, distilled with ritual. It was medicine, magic, and more than a few ancient criminals decided it was worth the risk of divine curses and unpleasant afterlife paperwork. Historians still argue whether some tombs were looted primarily for their perfumed contents, rather than their jewels. There are texts that describe missing jars, broken seals, even cases of guards being bribed with half-filled pots. Imagine dying royalty having to share the afterlife smelling like a peasant. Tragic. You run your fingers along one of the fallen jars. It's intact, but dusty. You pick it up carefully. The base is cool, smooth. The lid sealed with hardened pitch is still tight. For now, elsewhere in the chamber, 4 larger jars sit atop a stone shelf. They're labeled with the names of the sons of Horus, guardians of the internal organs. But these aren't the standard canopic jars. They're perfume vessels filled not with intestines, but with oil-infused linen used in mummification. Think of it as scented wrapping paper for the dead. You watch a silent embalmer at work, standing waist-deep in ritual. His hands glisten with resin as he anoints the body with thick oil from a clay jar shaped like an ink. The scent rises: frankincense, cedar, lotus root, and wait, is that crocodile dung? It is. Quirky tidbit incoming. Some embalming perfumes included ingredients that would never pass an FDA label: animal fat, lizard droppings, even powdered beetle shells, not just for effect. Some were believed to preserve the body better or ward off evil spirits, or possibly to guarantee no one would want to come near the corpse. Back outside the tomb, you find yourself in the embalming tent. It's a hot mess of cloth, sweat, incense, and ceremonial chanting. Every step here is drenched in perfume oil to cleanse the body, oil to coat the wrappings, oil to anoint the priest's tools. It's not a process. It's a perfume marathon. One priest, possibly delirious from the heat, whispers that the scent of a body could guide the soul's journey. Too sour, and it might get lost. Too sweet, and it might never want to leave. The ideal scent: balanced, warm, familiar. Like your grandmother's kitchen mixed with a desert storm. You catch sight of a young assistant carefully mixing a new blend in a low stone bowl. She adds oil of moringa, then a paste made from date pits, and finally, a pinch of something blue-green, likely ground lapis or dyed salt. She's copying a recipe from memory, passed down from her mother, who was a scent blender for nobles. This batch will fill 6 small jars, all shaped like poppy buds. Each will be placed in the folds of the mummy's linens, spaced evenly from neck to ankle. Why? No one agrees. But some scholars think the perfume helped mask any, let's call it afterlife awkwardness that might arise from imperfect preservation. Another theory? The oils served as passwords. Scent as code. You pass by the right smell, and the gods know you're legit. You sit for a moment near the supply chest. Dozens of jars inside, some cracked, others pristine. You hold one to your nose, ginger, maybe, or spikenard, and something older, something you can't name. This scent doesn't belong to a pharaoh, it belongs to time. You walk slowly up the hill outside, where workers are sealing the tomb entrance with massive limestone slabs. A scribe jots down the name of every object placed inside 4 alabaster jars, 3 ceramic ones, one of gold, another of blue glass, perfume pots, all of them, each recorded like a sacred oath. As the sun begins to drop, painting the desert in shades of fire and sand, the final seal is placed, the tomb is closed, the scent is buried, and the world above will forget at least for a while. You turn back towards the valley, the wind brushing your face, carrying with it the barest hint of oil, resin, memory. And somewhere out there, another thief is already making plans. It's still dark when you slip into the temple. Not quite night, not quite. Morning, the sky above, just a smudge of violet where the stars are beginning to hide, but inside, it's already alive. Candles flicker in narrow alcoves. A priest murmurs in a low voice, and the air, oh, it's heavy, not with dust, not with fear, with perfume. You follow the scent down a long limestone hallway, walls etched with prayers, each step echoing like you're trespassing in someone else's dream. At the end is a chamber, a sanctuary where gods are fed not food, but fragrance. A priestess stands at a low altar carved like a falcon's wings. She holds a wide, flat pot, its rim smeared with thick yellow oil. One by one, she dips her fingers in and rubs the oil along the lips of a statue, first the mouth, then the nose. This, she whispers, is nourishment. The scent is sharp, maybe cinnamon, cardamom, and a root you don't recognize. Here in this world, perfume isn't decoration, it's sustenance. Not for people, for gods. Statues are anointed daily with sacred oils. Their stone nostrils fed scent, so they can breathe the offerings of the faithful. Weird, sure, but comforting. In a way, like leaving cookies for divine guests who never quite show up, but always seem present. Historians still argue whether these daily perfume rituals were symbolic or literal acts of divine maintenance. Some say the scents were part of the god's physical embodiment. Others think it was theater fragrant drama to maintain power and awe. Either way, it stuck. For over 2,000 years, you notice that the pots used here are different, broader, flatter, designed not for storage, but access. You don't pour from them. You scoop, the oil sits exposed like a sunlit pond. Every surface of the pot is touched by hands, air, cloth. It's not about preservation, it's about presence. And it's not just one kind of oil per ritual. Oh no. Each hour of the day might require a different blend. There's one for waking the god, another for clothing the statue, one more for lighting the incense, and yet another for smiling. Yes, the gods had a perfume just to make them appear cheerful. Divine moods are apparently high maintenance. You slip into the next chamber, where apprentices grind ingredients on polished basalt slabs. They're not just crushing herbs. They're composing symphonies. One blends blue lotus with fenugreek and goose fat. Another mixes juniper ash with tamarind and rose water. Each has a specific timing, a purpose, a tone, a quirky note. One ancient papyrus actually includes perfume recipes labeled for joy, for stormy days, and for royal funerals. Someone, somewhere, had to decide what morning should smell like. Apparently, it was black cumin and myrrh. Go figure. You pause near a tray of pots shaped like cow horns, symbolizing Hathor, the goddess of music and joy. One jar is cracked, its contents seeping into the linen tray below. A priest carefully blots it up not with cloth, but with shaved wood slivers. The scent is preserved in the wood. Later, those scented sticks will be burned at sunrise, releasing the fragrance once more. Nothing wasted. Every smell recycled like divine compost. You pass through another room and stumble upon the scent library. Yes, an actual archive of jars. Hundreds of them, stacked on wooden shelves, labeled with hieroglyphs and bound in beeswax seals. Some are decades old, others centuries. No one dares throw them out. They might be cursed, or holy, or both. One sealed jar has a label so worn it's barely legible. A priest tells you it hasn't been opened in over 500 years. Too sacred, too dangerous, too smelly. Probably. He leans close and whispers, "We think it's the last of the tears of rest." He says it like it's a family secret or a bottle of aged wine. Whatever's in that pot, it stays shut. And oddly, that makes it more powerful. You step outside now, into the temple courtyard. The sun is rising. Birds are beginning to scream as they do, but your senses are still tangled in the sense of inside. You can still smell the oils clinging to your skin. Warm, woody, spiced, ancient. You don't want to wash them off, but the temple isn't done yet. At mid-morning, another priest appears with a brass censer and a tray of fresh oils. He opens a pot shaped like a coiled cobra, its top adorned with tiny glass beads. The scent that hits you is startling citrusy, smoky, floral. It doesn't smell old, it smells alive. He dips a linen wick into the oil, lights it, and begins to swing the censer. Smoke rises in curls, and you suddenly feel, well, not sleepy exactly, but definitely like someone else is in the room, watching, listening. That's the goal. Historians still debate whether temple scent rituals were meant to summon, honor, or impersonate gods. Some say the priests became temporary vessels. Others argue it was all pageantry sent as sacred set dressing. But no matter the theory, one truth lingers. Perfume meant presence. You couldn't see the gods, but you could smell them, and so could everyone else. Outside the temple walls, the scent drifted into the city. People knew which god was being worshipped just by the aroma in the air. Frankincense for Ra, lotus for Isis, cedar and pine for Osiris. You didn't need a calendar, you just needed a nose. One last moment before you leave, a novice priest, no older than 16, drops a full jar. It shatters. The scent explodes into the courtyard sharp, bitter, heady. Everyone stops. No one speaks. Then the head priest walks over. He doesn't scold. He kneels down, gathers the shards, and says quietly, "A broken jar is still an offering." And that's the thing. These pots weren't just containers. They were gestures, beliefs, time held in scent. And every one of them, whether intact or in pieces, mattered. You walk away, the aroma still chasing you, the wind pressing it into your hair like a forgotten hymn. You're wandering through a narrow alley now, far from temples and tombs, where the smells aren't curated, they're chaotic. The sun is high, the stone walls radiate heat, and every few steps, you're smacked in the face by a new scent: roasted onions, dried fish, goat fur, sweat, ash, clay, garlic, dung, flowers. More sweat, then finally, unexpectedly, something nice. You pause beside a modest little shop with no sign, just a faded reed curtain tied off with frayed string. Inside, an old woman stirs a pot over hot coals. Not dinner, not soup. A kind of experiment. Perfume making. Yes, but not the royal kind. This is street perfume. Local, improvised, and surprisingly resourceful. She doesn't have alabaster jars or imported frankincense. She has onions, herbs from the roof garden, a pinch of mint that grew through the cracks in her courtyard, and goat fat rendered fresh that morning. That's your base. She ladles the mixture into a squat ceramic jar, no glaze, no label, just a fingerprint pressed into the side like a maker's mark. She caps it with folded leaves and binds it in palm fiber. Done. Scent complete. Affordable. Honest, this isn't the perfume of gods, this is the smell of trying. You sit down beside her. She lets you hold one of her pots. It's warm from the fire, still slightly tacky at the base. She chuckles when you sniff it. Smells like hope. Doesn't it? She says. Or maybe she says soap, you're not sure. Historians still argue whether these kinds of homemade perfumes were ever recorded properly. Most surviving scent recipes come from temples or tombs, not tiny homes like this. But every whiff of burned resin, every old pot with a waxy residue found in a ruined village, those tell the other half of the story, the unglamorous one, the real one. You step outside and notice other versions of the same struggle. A market vendor slaps flies off a tray of dried herbs, bragging loudly that his scent blend can cure heartbreak and foot rot. You don't ask about the testing process. A teenager with stained fingers sells little pots of cheap royal oil to passing soldiers. The jars are repurposed beer containers, and you suspect the oil might just be watered down animal grease with one wilted petal floating inside. But the soldiers buy them anyway. Why? Because scent still matters. Even if it's fake, even if it's cheap, it gives you the illusion of luxury, of hygiene, of control. A quirky tidbit. Some ancient Egyptian households used perfume in place of actual bathing. A light dab behind the ears, maybe a quick rub on the chest, and voila, you're clean. At least, you smell like you pass by a young girl dipping reeds into a ceramic pot, then fanning herself with them. It's rudimentary air freshening. It smells faintly of date syrup and crushed marjoram. Not bad. Honestly, she smiles at you, then offers a small jar crudely painted with a bird that looks like it got into a fight with the brush. Inside, a thick brownish goop. She doesn't know exactly what's in it. Her grandmother made it. Her mother swears by it. Her older brother uses it on his sandals to keep them from smelling like war. You buy it. Because, why not? These little pots don't appear in the museums. They're not photographed, not gilded, not famous. But they're everywhere. On shelves, in satchels, hidden in cooking spaces, tucked under beds. They're part of daily survival, and survival doesn't care about alabaster. You wander toward the edge of town now, where homes are fewer and gardens start to take over. You find a group of women kneeling in the shade, grinding petals and herbs with a stone roller. Their pots are lined up beside them, some shaped like flattened pears, others more rectangular, like ancient lunch boxes. They're gossiping, not about the pharaoh, about a neighbor who tried to pass off donkey tallow as sacred cow oil. Scandalous. They laugh hard enough to spill a jar. The scent hits the dirt and immediately starts a bee problem. They hand you one of their finished jars. The scent is soft, floral. It clings to your skin like a lullaby. You don't ask what's in it. They won't tell you anyway. This is the world of the non-elite, the forgotten. The cracked pots and corner blenders, no temples, no scribes, no official recipes, just instinct, inheritance, and whatever you can find that doesn't immediately smell like death. And yet, you begin to notice patterns. Most pots are sealed with linen dipped in beeswax. Most use clay that's low-fired, porous, capable of letting the scent breathe. Many are reused, scrubbed clean mostly, then filled again with a new blend. Sustainability, ancient style. One woman tells you she stores different scents in pots depending on the day. One for angry moods, another for market days, another for when her mother-in-law visits. You're not sure if that one's calming or repelling. A lot of modern historians underestimate this world. But you're here. You see the truth. Perfume isn't just for palaces, it's for people, for moods, for memory, for covering up whatever yesterday left behind. As the day winds down, the alley fills with smoke and chatter. People light small bundles of herbs in front of their doors, waving the smoke into the corners of their homes like protection, or maybe just to keep the flies out. Intentions are always layered. You hold your little bird jar close. The clay is cooling now. The scent inside has changed, softened, deepened. You breathe it in and realize it may not be sacred, it may not be rare, but it's theirs. And that makes it worthy. You walk home, the scent trailing behind you like the echo of a song. You're deeper in the desert now. Not by accident, this is where the stone lives. And stone, it turns out, is the new clay. Specifically, alabaster. You're standing at the mouth of a quarry in Middle Egypt, the sun flattening everything in sight. Men chip away at blocks of milky white rock, each blow of the copper chisel echoing like a heartbeat inside the canyon walls. Dust clings to their lashes, their sweat, their sandals. It smells like powdered limestone and something vaguely metallic. If you breathe too hard, you'll taste it in your teeth. But they don't complain. Alabaster is precious. It's soft enough to carve, strong enough to last, and when polished, it glows from within like it swallowed a candle. Historians still debate whether perfume pots made of alabaster were ever considered more pure than those made of clay, or if it was just a case of wealth showing off. Some ancient texts describe alabaster as cool to the gods, suggesting it wasn't just luxurious, it was spiritual air conditioning. You follow one worker down into the hollowed belly of the quarry. He shows you the early stages of a pot, a rough cylinder chipped from the rock face. Barely the size of your palm, no design yet, just potential. Later, he'll hand it off to a sculptor in town. There, it might become a tall, elegant flask shaped like a papyrus stalk, or a duck, wings tucked tight, or your personal favorite, a pomegranate, complete with a carved cap that resembles a tiny crown. That's right, these pots are no longer just containers, they're characters. And some get weird. You see one jar shaped like a fish, another like a gazelle. There's even one carved to resemble a bunch of grapes. It's not entirely clear whether this was aesthetic whimsy or some sort of scent-based pun, but scholars still argue about it. One theory claims each shape matched the type of oil inside lotus oils in lotus-shaped jars, fig oils in fig jars, and so on. Another theory, people just liked adorable things. You're invited into a stoneworker's shop. It smells of wax and sweat and stone dust. Inside, the sculptor shows you his collection, jars that took days, sometimes weeks, to finish. He runs his fingers over one shape like a miniature obelisk, whispering, "This one's for a temple offering." Then he shows you another, shaped like a monkey holding its knees. "That one's for love potions." You ask if they work. He just shrugs. You turn your attention to the carving tools. Bronze chisels, sand-polished abrasives, tiny scoops made from bone. It's all low-tech. But the results, flawless. And that's the trick. Alabaster doesn't forgive mistakes. One wrong tap and the whole pot fractures. So, when one survives, it becomes more than a vessel. It becomes an object of pride. A quirky detail. Archaeologists once found a perfume jar shaped like a loaf of bread, complete with hand-carved sesame seeds. No one knows if it was serious or satire, but someone, somewhere, wanted their scent to smell like breakfast, or at least make you think of it. You head back into town with a caravan of sculptors. They carry their finished pots in padded linen sacks. Every jolt of the donkey makes them wince. The pots are delicate, not in strength, but in meaning. You pass through a merchant square where the perfumers are already waiting. They unwrap each jar like it's a newborn. One man kisses the rim of a duck-shaped vessel before filling it with a thick, golden oil that smells of saffron and crushed sandalwood. Another pours a floral blend into a fish-shaped jar and grins. For someone who swims in love, maybe you're starting to see it now. These jars are marketing, a way to seduce not just the nose, but the imagination. The pot tells you how to feel about what's inside. It gives scent a story. One woman sells only poppy-shaped jars for sleep. She tells you, and gestures to the people sleeping on benches nearby. You're not sure if they're product testimonials or just bored. As night falls, you follow the glow of lanterns toward a house where nobles are gathering for a scent ceremony. It's not religious. Exactly. More competitive. Each guest brings a perfume jar, uniquely carved, beautifully sealed. One is shaped like a rearing cobra. Another is a falcon clutching a small basin in its claws. The scent inside, unimportant. At least to them, what matters is how stunning the jar is. They pass them around, exchanging compliments, secrets, and the occasional sideways insult disguised as flattery. "Oh, your jar is so brave, I wouldn't have chosen granite myself." But it's, "Thank you, I love it." It's a Striking. Ouch! Then, the hosts unveil their collection. Dozens of alabaster pots, arranged on a backlit shelf, each glowing like captured moonlight. One is shaped like a lotus opening mid-bloom. Another is simply a perfect sphere, so flawless it seems impossible. The scent inside: rosewater, spikenard, cedar resin, divine. But in truth, no one remembers the scent by morning. They remember the jars, because these vessels aren't just for oil anymore. They're art flexes, conversation starters, memory holders, and the people who carve them. They're artists of scent, without ever touching a drop of perfume. As the guests file out, the hosts carefully reseal each pot, pressing a wax stamp onto the cloth. Tying the threads tight, every jar returns to its shelf, untouched until the next event, or until the next rumor. And you leave with dust on your robe, the smell of heated stone in your hair, and the memory of a monkey-shaped perfume jar that probably heard more secrets than most humans ever will. The Nile is gentle this morning, carrying with it more than water. You ride upstream on a barge that creaks with cargo, not wheat, not linen. Not statues, but something softer, sweeter. Cuttings from incense trees, empty perfume molds, swaddled jars waiting to be filled. You're part of an expedition, not just for trade, but for treasure of the scented kind. At the head of the fleet, none other than Queen Hatshepsut's crew. And she's not just importing luxury, she's rewriting the fragrance game. Her obsession, the land of Punt. No one knows exactly where Punt was. Historians are still arguing about it. But what's clear is that it smelled incredible. Frankincense trees, myrrh shrubs, rare resins that oozed golden tears when cut. And now, thanks to Hatshepsut, a few of those sacred trees are being brought back to Egyptian soil, roots wrapped like babies, guarded like gold. You lean over the barge railing as priests inspect the cargo. Wrapped bundles of resin so potent it makes your eyes water. They test tau samples by rubbing them into small clay molds, each shaped like the final vessel it will fill. These aren't just test batches. They're prototype perfumes, and the jars they're planning. Something new. In the Queen's perfume workshops, yes. She had entire workshops dedicated to scent artisans begin designing pots shaped not just for beauty, but for symbolism. One resembles the sun disk of Ra, etched with rays. Another mimics the sacred cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, where Hatshepsut's temple watches over the desert. A third is shaped like a pair of open arms. The message is subtle but clear. We embrace your devotion. Also, we smell better than Babylon. You sneak a peek into the Queen's private stores. The air here is soft, humid with cedar, sugarcane ash, and lotus. Dozens of vessels sit on a raised platform, sealed tight, many marked with royal stamps. One is shaped like a scarab. Another looks suspiciously like a mountain goat. You don't ask. Some jars are inscribed with poetry. May my scent kiss your skin before my lips ever do. Oil of Punt, richer than gold, softer than forgiveness. To be remembered, even in silence, leave a trace of perfume. A quirky fact: one of the jars unearthed from Hatshepsut's mortuary temple still contained a traceable perfume oil when opened over 3,000 years later. Chemists tested it and found compounds consistent with myrrh, pine resin, and animal fat. The smell, funky, one said, but undeniably intentional. Back on land, you follow the trail to the Queen's Botanical Gardens Real, living gardens filled with foreign plants, all carefully cataloged and obsessively guarded. The perfume jars used here are unique, wide mouth, meant to scoop oil and apply it directly to leaves. Yes, the Queen perfumed her plants. You observe one courtier dabbing oil onto a fig tree. Makes the fruit sweeter, she claims. You're not sure if that's science or superstition. Probably both. Ancient Egypt was good at mixing the two. Hatshepsut wasn't just collecting smell. She was manufacturing identity. Each new jar, each new blend, became part of a royal language. You didn't just see her power, you inhaled it. Even the jars given as gifts to foreign dignitaries were strategic. She didn't send gold, she sent smell. Fragrance sealed in hand-carved alabaster jars, shaped like sacred birds or river reeds. Here, the gift said, is how we smell. Remember us. Historians still debate whether Hatshepsut used scent diplomacy to offset her controversial reign, a female pharaoh. How dare she? But there's no doubt she knew how to perfume a narrative. You trail behind a servant carrying one such gift jar toward a boat bound for Syria. The pot is slim, shaped like a standing ibis, its feathers lightly etched into the stone. The oil inside, a pine and citrus blend with what smells like crushed shell. Bold, exotic, designed to confuse and impress, a message in smell. We are not like you. You linger at the docks as crates are loaded. Pots packed in straw, layered in linen, swaddled like infants. The scent still escapes subtle, then sharp, then soft again. One worker complains his nose hasn't worked properly in days. Smells like I'm married to incense, he mutters. Further inland, you're invited to a perfumer's guild. The Queen's personal scent specialists. Their jars are laid out in precise rows. Each pot is color-coded. Red for temple blends, green for garden oils, black for embalming, gold for diplomatic gifts. One artisan demonstrates how molds are made clay pressed around wooden forms, baked gently, then glazed in soft earth tones. The finished vessels are dipped in oils to cure the surface. Apparently, even the jar must smell divine. You notice one perfume pot cooling in the corner. It's different, larger, more rounded, with tiny carvings of ships around its base. The artisan sees your interest. That one, he whispers, is the scent of punt. You lean close. The smell is sweet, bitter, spicy, like a memory with sharp edges. And even though it's sealed, you swear it's humming. That jar, like so many crafted under Hatshepsut's rule, isn't just a container. It's a message, a time capsule, a warning, and a welcome. You close your eyes and imagine someone, thousands of years later, finding it buried in the sand, opening it, breathing in, and for just one moment smelling exactly what she wanted them to. It's late afternoon now, and you're back in the crowded markets of Thebes, dodging donkey carts, linen sellers, and the occasional child with honey stuck to their face. But something's changed in the air. There's tension, competition. The scent stalls are fuller than ever, and perfume jars glitter from every corner like they're about to stage a coup. You're in the middle of a scent war. On one side, Egypt. Traditional, alabaster, botanical, homegrown resins blended with careful ritual. On the other, Babylonian imports. Flashy, oily, packaged in ceramic bottles with metal caps and names like Moon's Whisper and Lion Blood Desire. It's ancient marketing warfare, and it smells divine. You pause at a corner booth. A merchant in bright linen is shouting about his Babylonian inventory. Thick glass jars shaped like date palms and crescent moons. The oils inside shimmer in layers, gold, amber, emerald. You tilt one bottle and it rolls like molten opal. Impressive. Possibly toxic. The Egyptian merchant next door isn't having it. He slams his hand on the table, revealing a set of alabaster pots so perfectly carved they look like they were breathed into existence. Why put wine in a sewer pipe? He shouts, glass is for people who don't plan to live long. You back away slowly. The patriotism is intense. Historians still argue whether this period marked a true rivalry in perfumery or just a cultural scuffle exaggerated by time. But records show that Egypt began ramping up production around this era, refining techniques and even developing new jar styles meant to compete with the imports. Think sleeker shapes, sharper stoppers, secret compartments in the base. Yes, perfume pot espionage was real. You slip into a small shop to escape the shouting. Inside, a middle-aged woman gestures to a shelf of hybrid jars. Babylonian outside, Egyptian inside, she says with a wink. The jars are glazed in bright colors indigo, rust red, mica black, but the oils, pure Nile-grown ingredients. She calls it smell local, look foreign, smart. You test one. The pot is shaped like a curled cat with a removable head. The scent, blue lotus, cedar, and something sharp, maybe clove. It makes your nose twitch in a good way. A fringe theory suggests that some Egyptian artisans began copying Babylonian styles out of spite, then secretly filled the jars with better blends to win back customers. Passive-aggressive perfumery. We love to see it. Back outside, the market has become the game of one-upmanship. A Babylonian salesman unveils a new jar shaped like a star. Not symbolic, just trendy. A nearby Egyptian carver counters with one shaped like the god Thoth holding a scroll. Smarter smells. He boasts, for smarter people, you sneak behind the booths, where the real action is. Artisans whisper about import taxes, about sourcing issues, about which clay makes the jar feel cooler in the hand. You overhear someone mutter, they use fish oil now. Can you believe that? You follow the trail to a perfume competition. Yes, those exist. 2 jars are placed on a marble pedestal, one Egyptian, one Babylonian. A crowd gathers. A priest steps forward, opens both, fans them toward a statue of Hathor, and waits. The breeze shifts. Everyone waits. A pigeon lands on the Babylonian jar. The Egyptian pot wins. Kind of. The point isn't which scent was better, it's that both jars now carry a kind of reputation. And reputation sticks. It lives in the clay, in the oil, in the whispered reviews between neighbors. You drift into the evening with a small pot in your hands. Glass base, alabaster lid, a fusion, inside, an oil that smells like papyrus ink, cinnamon, and grief. It's called Scribe's Goodbye, and the merchant swears it was made to honor a dead scholar. You don't know if that's true, but it smells like a memory you've never had. One quirky note. Some perfume jars from this era include messages inside the clay, inscriptions carved while the jar was being molded, then sealed beneath the glaze. For luck, for love, one was found that simply said, this one smells weird. Brutal honesty. Ancient edition. You wander back toward the river, where traders are packing up. Babylonian jars clink together. Glass on glass. Egyptian pots are wrapped in linen like sleeping children. A merchant lights a final stick of incense, the smoke curling up around her as she seals her final sale. In the distance, a group of teenagers argue over which scent is better for attracting a priestess. One swears by cedar and mint. Another insists it's black myrrh, with a hint of fig. A third says, just smell rich, and walks off. Ancient teenager energy. Eternal. The last thing you see before the sun fully drops is a quiet exchange. An Egyptian pot passed to a Babylonian trader. No fuss, no speech, just a nod. The scent inside, unknown, but the jar, familiar. Sometimes, even in a scent war, beauty wins. The street lights. Okay, torches flicker low as you turn down a quieter alley. The air is cooler here, less filled with market bickering and more with murmurs. You're entering a very different part of town now. Less trade, more intimacy, not scent wars, scent, rituals. You step inside a small home where laughter drifts like smoke. 2 young women are seated on woven mats, surrounded by low trays filled with bowls, brushes, and you guessed it, jars? Not temple standard alabaster this time. These are smaller, hand-painted, and multi-purpose. You realize what's happening as one woman lifts the lid of a squat jar and dips her pinky finger inside. She draws out a black paste and slides it beneath her eyelid in a swift, practiced move. Kohl, eyeliner, medicine, all from the same pot. These jars aren't just about perfume anymore. They've gone domestic, multi-use. They're found in every purse, every drawer, every bedside nook. A little oil, a little kohl, a little powdered resin, all sealed tight and applied with precision. Gossip, and sometimes intention. You're handed one to try. It's cool to the touch, decorated with little stars etched into the clay. Inside, a blend of crushed galena mixed with perfumed oil smells like charcoal and lavender. You dip a carved reed in, mimic the motion. It stings slightly, looks dramatic. Very Cleopatra before Cleopatra. Historians still argue whether perfume jars were used primarily for cosmetics, or if this cosmetic function evolved later, as scent got folded into daily life. But the evidence is everywhere. These jars, small, stackable, often marked with fluent symbols, started to live where the people lived, not in shrines or markets, but in bedrooms. You pass into another room, where a low shelf holds more jars. One is shaped like a heart. Another is flat and circular, with tiny painted flowers all around its rim. A third is tucked into a woven pouch made of palm fronds and linen. That one's clearly special. Its owner tells you she keeps it hidden from her husband. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. Not everything's meant to be shared. That's the thing about these jars now, they're not just objects. They're confessions. You move through the neighborhood, ducking into house after house, finding the same story over and over. Men applying oils before prayer, children being anointed with sweet balm after a bath, grandmothers rubbing aching joints with cinnamon salve stored in an old wedding jar. Each time, the scent is linked to the pot, and the pot is linked to a story. A quirky little aside, some of these personal pots were customized with names, poems, even jokes. One excavated in Saqqara reads, "Don't borrow, don't return." Passive-aggressive sibling behavior apparently spans millennia. You settle next into a courtyard where 4 women are preparing for a festival. They sit in a circle, painting each other's nails with scented oils, braiding hair, and reapplying coal from the same small green glazed jar. There's no ceremony, just closeness. The pot passes from hand to hand, each touch familiar, respectful. That jar is shaped like a cat, not just any cat Bastet, goddess of protection and sensuality. It's a fitting container for something designed to make you feel like your best self, or at least like someone with very good smelling wrists. One of the women tells a story. Her mother used to sleep with a perfume pot under her pillow. Not for the scent, but because she swore it kept nightmares away. Maybe it did. Maybe the comfort of smell is its own kind of protection. You close your eyes and breathe it in lotus, almond oil, maybe a touch of rosewood. It's soft, nostalgic, immediate. And now, the jar has passed to her, and her daughter already knows it's hers next. These pots aren't relics, they're heirlooms. Less like antiques, more like diaries that smell good. As the evening cools, you join a young couple on a rooftop. They share a small jar between them, something pale blue and worn smooth by years of use. No grand shape, no gilded lid, just a small vessel that fits perfectly in 2 hands. They each apply a drop of oil to their wrists, then trade jars for a second, then lean close, breathing each other in. No words, just scent. Historians speculate that perfume played a significant role in romantic rituals, courtship, seduction, even apologies. Some texts suggest lovers had their own unique blends, recognizable in the dark, a scented signature. A way to say, "It's me," without speaking. You glance at the jar again. Inside, the oil is nearly gone, but they're not rushing to refill it. Because the scent, it lingers. On the skin, in the air, in memory. You sit quietly as the stars emerge, watching the gentle trade of glances and oils, and small ceramic vessels that mean more than they let on. And before you leave, the woman presses a tiny pot into your hand, unmarked, undecorated, still warm. "Give it to someone," she says. When you don't know what to say, you nod, tuck it into your bag, and walk off with a smell that feels like belonging. The night is fading, and you find yourself drawn not to sleep, but to firelight. You follow the glow of flickering orange down a hill, toward a workshop that doesn't sleep. The air is different here, hotter, sharper, and for the first time in this long, fragrant journey, the scent of glass is stronger than the scent of perfume. You're standing in one of Egypt's oldest glass-making furnaces, tucked behind a kiln the size of a small cottage. Sand, ash, and lime are being fed into fire so hot it shimmers in waves. The heat claws at your lungs, and everything smells like molten dust and sweat. But through the haze, you see it. The birth of the next perfume revolution. Glass jars, not alabaster, not clay, something newer, flashier, trickier to make. But oh, how it shines! An artisan pulls a glowing lump of molten glass from the furnace using a long hollow rod. He turns it slowly, breathes into it carefully, shaping it into a delicate bulb. It swells like a soap bubble, then shrinks again under the pressure of a smooth, practiced hand. You watch, breath held, as he snips it free with bronze shears. The jar cools fast, crusting into translucence. He places it beside others, some blue as lapis, others green as spring reeds, some the color of river fog at dawn. These are not humble pots. They're declarations. Historians still argue whether glass perfume jars were first developed in Egypt or imported from the Levant. There's enough overlap and enough pride that neither side will fully concede. But by 1500 BCE, Egypt had become a global scent powerhouse, and glass was its new calling card. You peer into a display tray of finished jars. One is twisted into the shape of a spiral shell. Another flares at the lip like a trumpet flower. There's one that looks like a drop of frozen honey. Each one catches the light, refracting fire and starlight in its curves. You feel like you're staring into crystallized music. And inside each oil, you lift a jar gently and roll it between your palms. It's warm, not from the fire, but from proximity, like it's remembering being born. The scent inside is trapped tight. Glass doesn't breathe like clay. It doesn't weep like alabaster. It guards its secrets. The artisan explains that this is both blessing and curse. The oils stay potent longer, but they must be perfect before bottling. There's no letting it mellow once sealed, and refilling, not without breaking the jar. Many were one-use only luxury at its most unapologetic. A quirky tidbit: some of the earliest glass perfume bottles had fake stoppers, just decorative knobs. The jars were sealed permanently, meant to be smashed open for use. One-time scent grenades, unboxing videos, ancient edition. You head to the cooling racks, where assistants polish finished jars with linen dipped in fine sand. They whisper to each other about recent commissions. One for a nobleman's wedding, shaped like twin birds. Another for a burial, shaped like a teardrop. One more for a temple, etched with falcons in flight. It's clear now glass has transformed perfume jars into jewelry. You don't just use them. You display them, gift them, worship them. You slip into the back room where the perfumers await. Rows of glass jars sit uncorked, waiting to be filled. The scent here is overwhelming. Sharp myrrh, syrupy lotus, spicy cedarwood, mellow saffron. Someone's blending a new oil called Ra's Return, a hot, citrus-forward scent with an edge of scorched pine. Smells like ambition and sunburn. The filling process is delicate. A funnel made of curled bronze reed slides into the jar, one drop at a time. No spills, no smudges. The glass demands cleanliness, reverence, precision, and the labels, painted directly on tiny hieroglyphs done with brushes so thin you can barely see the bristles. One says, "For love." Another, "For the third wife." And one mysteriously just says, "Later." You move through the rows, watching the scent makers work. Every step is part art, part chemistry, part ritual. Each jar is sealed with beeswax and linen, but in a stylish twist. Many are dipped in colored resin, bright reds, deep blues, stark whites. It's not about preserving, it's about stunning. You follow one jar as it leaves the table, a cobalt blue spiral, sealed with a gold thread, marked with the symbol for Hathor. It's packed into a wooden crate, layered with straw and tucked between rolls of linen. It's heading to a royal festival, maybe even to Hatshepsut herself. But here's the catch. It might not ever be opened, because perfume jars now aren't always used. Some are just collected, worshipped, envied, like a scent you own but never wear, because the jar alone says enough. You drift into a quieter part of the workshop, more shadow than flame. There, in a corner cabinet, sit the failures, glass pots warped in fire, cracked at the rim, misshapen or off color. But even they sparkle in the light like bruised stars. You reach for one shaped like a dove with one wing too short, still sealed, still full of scent. You open it, and suddenly you're standing in a garden. Water lilies blooming, honey drying on clay. Someone laughing beside a fig tree. Someone, Yusul. Us. You'll never meet. In a time that's long gone, but their scent, their jar, still here, still alive. You seal it gently and place it back. Because sometimes, even imperfect jars hold perfect memories. By now, you've traveled from humble clay to glowing glass, from temple corridors to lovers' rooftops. But tonight, the road veers into darker territory. You're not in a market, not in a palace. You're crouched in the shadows of a crumbling border outpost, watching as foreign soldiers and curious merchants crowd around a low fire. They're passing something around. Not wine, not food, a jar. Small, heavy, Egyptian. But it doesn't stay Egyptian for long. One man turns it over in his hands, squints at the symbols, then laughs and mutters something in Akkadian. A scribe nearby takes notes. Another man begins sketching it in charcoal on papyrus, and you watch, quietly horrified but also fascinated, as your precious perfume pot is slowly appropriated. Welcome to the era of cultural scent lifting. As Egypt expanded, contracted, fought, and flirted with neighboring empires, Babylon, Assyria, Hittites, later Greeks and Romans, its jars became souvenirs, trophies, and eventually templates. Everyone wanted to smell Egyptian, and if they couldn't be Egyptian, well, they'd just make it up as they went. Historians still debate whether this was admiration, competition, or simple theft. The truth, probably a messy blend of all three, like most good perfumes. You follow the trail of one particular jar, stolen during a palace raid, copied by a Babylonian artisan, and then rebranded as Sacred Oil of the Twin Rivers. No twin rivers were involved. The jar is similar in shape, narrow neck, rounded base, but the symbols have been swapped for stylized reeds and stars. Decorative, confusing, marketable. You sneak behind the workshop where these knockoffs are made. Rows of imitation jars sit cooling in the dust. Some have animal motifs completely alien to Egypt: foxes, bulls, even lions holding bows. It's chaotic. But you have to admit, some are beautiful. You crack one open. The scent is familiar, but off. Like someone tried to recreate lotus oil from memory after one whiff in a dark hallway. Too sweet. Not enough depth, but not bad. A quirky tidbit. One Greek traveler wrote about acquiring an Egyptian scent in a local market, only to discover it was made from olive oil, vinegar, and mashed dates. He used it anyway. Claimed it made his beard smell like wisdom. Questionable results. You wander into a Roman villa next. Mosaic floors, marble everything. And in the atrium, a line of perfume jars on a shelf labeled exotic luxuries. You recognize the shapes immediately. Egyptian influence all over them. One is an exact replica of a Theban temple jar, but now it's made of terracotta and has a Roman eagle where Horus used to be. You pick it up, heavier, clumsier, but strangely familiar. The scent, not bad. Strong notes of pine, grape resin, and some imported spice that makes your eyes water. Romans weren't shy about scent. They wore it everywhere: skin, clothes, hair, furniture, even pets. One emperor was rumored to bathe in rose oil daily and to have custom jars made in the likeness of his favorite concubine's nose. Real story. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, it proves the point. Egypt taught the world how to bottle beauty, and the world ran with it. You enter a perfumery in Alexandria, where Greek and Egyptian methods collide. Inside, the jars are a mix of both traditions. Some have Greek inscriptions, others Egyptian hieroglyphs. One has both, fighting for space on the same base. It is shaped like a shell, painted sky blue, and sealed with what looks like imported wax. You sniff it. It's stunning. Even a stolen melody can be lovely. A priest working in the shop tells you something quietly. We make ours in honor, not imitation. We remember where scent began. He opens a hidden drawer beneath the counter and lifts out a small, dusty jar. It's old, cracked, a true Egyptian piece. Inside, nothing. But the clay still smells faintly of cedar and smoke, a ghost of a scent. He doesn't use it. He just keeps it near the new jars. A reminder, a teacher, a relic. Historians speculate that some Roman temples even used Egyptian-style scent rituals long after forgetting what they meant. They copied the motions, the tools, even the jars, but not the meaning. Form without spirit. But isn't that always the risk when beauty travels? You watch a shipment of jars loaded onto a Roman galley. They're packed in straw, labeled in Latin, and destined for an aristocrat who probably thinks Osiris is a type of olive. Still, you smile, because somewhere in those jars, a bit of Egypt still lingers, and it's not gone. It's changed. Later, you return to a quiet Egyptian courtyard, where an old woman pours oil into a worn alabaster jar. She shrugs at the Roman copies. Let them imitate, she says. We still remember the original smell. You nod. Because you've smelled both. And memory, when bottled correctly, doesn't need a passport. The world has moved on, or so it thinks. You walk through a sun-bleached ruin now, your sandals crunching over pottery shards, half swallowed by the sand. No one's around. No markets. No queens. No gods demanding daily anointing rituals. Just the low wind hissing through columns like it's trying to remember a song. It forgot a few empires ago. You crouch and pick up a broken piece of a perfume pot. Smooth, cream-colored, alabaster. Once part of a wide-mouthed jar, maybe temple use, maybe personal. It's hard to tell, but the inside still carries a faint scent. You hold it to your nose, and yes, it's still there. Lotus. Faint. So faint it might be imagined, but it's there, clinging to stone like a secret. You close your eyes. For a second, the air around you is humid again, filled with prayer smoke. Someone nearby is humming. Then it fades. You're not in the golden age of Egyptian perfumery anymore. You're in the echoes, the leftovers, the jars forgotten by tomb robbers and museum curators alike. And yet, they're not silent. This part of the story belongs to the archaeologists, the modern scent detectives, the ones brushing dirt from ruins with toothbrushes, whispering, "Come on, give us something," as they crack open sealed vessels older than their own countries. You join one such dig outside Memphis. A cluster of researchers crowd around a small pit where a line of vessels miraculously intact have just been uncovered. They're squat, rounded, some sealed with resin so old it's fossilized. One jar is gently handed off to a specialist in gloves. She opens it slowly. The wind shifts, and the smell rises. It's unexpected, rich, woody, a hint of honey, then something almost minty. One researcher shouts, "It's caffeine." Half the team groans. The other half cheers. Apparently, someone wins a bet. Historians still argue about what Kai-Fi actually was: a perfume, an incense, a medical balm. Recipes vary wildly. Some list over 20 ingredients, from raisins to wine to juniper berries. One version even includes asphalt, fragrant asphalt. Somehow, you trail the jar to a lab. Inside, a scent chemist. Yes, that's a real thing. Places a vial of extracted residue under a gas chromatograph. The machine hums. Peaks appear on the screen. Molecules named like aliens. It's perfume science now, less poetic, but equally devoted. One quirky twist. Modern perfumers sometimes try to recreate these ancient scents. Pharaoh's breath, sacred resin. No. 5. Isis by candlelight. They use the same ingredients well, the legal ones, and package them in glass bottles with embossed gold hieroglyphs. They even imitate the jars. Rounded bases, papyrus-etched necks, lids shaped like falcons. It's marketing, sure, but also homage. You attend a museum exhibit dedicated entirely to ancient Egyptian scent culture. It's quiet, reverent. People lean into glass cases as if trying to smell through the centuries. One display features 15 pots from crude village pieces to royal glass flasks, each one accompanied by a digital scent profile and a plaque explaining its assumed use. Children press buttons to release scent samples. Parents recoil. One whispers, "That smells like myrrh and goat." A nearby attendant nods solemnly. Accurate. You linger at the final display, a single alabaster jar, cracked at the rim, labeled only unknown use. Faint lotus residue. That's it. No story. No owner. Just a leftover vessel from someone who thought it was important enough to save. And yet, it makes you pause. Because the truth is, these jars aren't extinct. They're dormant. There are still pots buried under sand, sealed in forgotten tombs, walled into collapsed homes, still waiting, still holding traces of a scent someone, somewhere, cared enough to bottle, maybe for a god, maybe for a lover, maybe just to feel human for a moment longer. Back outside, you kneel in the sand. Let it run through your fingers. Grainy, golden, hot. You wonder, what will they say of your jars someday? The ones filled with hair product, face cream, that expensive cologne you never use but can't throw out. They'll find them. They'll open them. And maybe, just maybe, they'll say, this one mattered. You stand, brush your hands off. The wind picks up, carries a faint scent past your shoulder. Maybe it's the archaeologists behind you. Maybe it's something deeper. You turn your head, breathe in. It's faint, but it's real. Time doesn't erase scent. It buries it. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it gives it back. You've come full circle. You walk now through the Museum of Empty Air, a modern nickname for a silent archive housed deep within Cairo's older districts. No glowing digital screens, no gift shop candles pretending to be pharaohs' favorites, just shelves, endless shelves, and on them, jars, thousands of them. Some are displayed like jewels behind glass, perfectly lit to catch every swirl of glaze or flicker of mineral shine. Others are still wrapped in excavation cloths, tagged in a century-old hand with notes like unknown function, probable ritual use, or unusual odor. One simply says, strong, open carefully. You sit at a long wooden table. A curator brings you a tray, 4 perfume jars recovered from a collapsed storeroom near Heliopolis. You're told not to touch, but you can smell. The first jar, cracked down the side, gives off a dry sweetness lotus. Definitely, maybe tempered with aged beeswax. The second is faintly musty, like damp frankincense and thyme. The third, nothing. Just silence. Not every jar keeps its promises, but the fourth, it's small, thick-walled, shaped like a reed bundled with twine. Its stopper is still intact. They let you watch as it's unsealed, inch by inch, then, softly, the scent escapes. It's not a hit. It's not a slap. It's a whisper. Warm, round, melancholy. Notes of crushed leaves, amber, a sigh of resin, and something you can't name but feel like walking through the same garden twice, years apart. And in that moment, you understand something unspoken. These jars weren't meant to be impressive. They were meant to remain. Perfume jars weren't designed just for gods or queens or flirtations in the dark. They were designed to hold what couldn't be held: memory, presence, mood. A moment suspended in oil, a voice you carry on your wrist, a goodbye you dab on your collarbone and never quite forget. You wander deeper into the archive. The oldest jars aren't the most ornate. They're the quietest. No flashy shapes, no decorative paint, just perfect, weighty simplicity. Made to last, made to vanish into time, then return in bursts. A curator shows you one final piece, unassuming. Clay, no inscriptions. But when they opened it decades ago, they found traces of saffron oil and clove. It was sealed again quickly. Why? Because even the air inside was sacred. A quirky, almost poetic fact. Some archaeologists began resealing pots immediately after sampling them, not to preserve the oil, but to preserve the silence. To hold on to the stillness of the jar, like pressing the pause button on a memory, like telling time, not yet. Historians continue to debate the spiritual weight of these vessels. Some say they were tools, others say they were offerings. A few argue that they were language messages passed not with words, but with breath, scent, emotion. You pass a wall of glass cases, each holding a jar labeled only by era and excavation site. Abydos, 19th dynasty. Amarna, 18th dynasty. Luxor, 12th dynasty. Crocodile-shaped jar. Cracked, duck-shaped jar. Perfect. You don't need more than that. The rest is already in the air. Before you leave, the curator asks if you'd like to hold one. Carefully, they hand you a replica. A perfect copy of a 3,000-year-old perfume pot. Empty, but warm from the curator's palm. You lift it. It fits perfectly in your hand. Just like the originals did, just like they always will. Because long after the scent is gone, after the gods are quiet, after the names have faded from stone, the jar remains, waiting, ready, and still full of something. Now the lights have dimmed. The jars are back on their shelves. The museum has gone quiet, and even the air has stopped shifting. You're still holding that last little pot, still feeling its weight in your hand, still wondering what scent it once held or might still hold. Somewhere deep in the clay, you don't need to know its name, you don't need a label, you just need to sit with it. Let your breathing slow, inhale softly, let your shoulders ease downward. Let the image of those ancient jars, tucked into corners of temples, slipped into lovers' satchels, buried beneath golden coffins, drift gently across your mind like the scent of myrrh on the breeze. Thousands of hands shaped these vessels, hundreds of voices poured stories into them, and just a few lucky moments rare, fragile, fragrant, made it all the way to you. Sleep now, with those stories hovering just outside the edge of your thoughts. Not urgent, not loud, just there. Soft, ancient, still sealed,